Dr. Gorka, good talking to you, sir.
Larry, I'm on season 7 of ER, so I can do a pretty decent CPR if needed.
This is good to know. And by the time you actually binge the whole thing, you'll be able to do open heart surgery. So that's excellent.
It is rather addictive, I have to say, so who knows?
Is it as addictive as watching the Paul Manafort trial proceedings, Dr. Gorka? That is riveting.
In a kind of Monty Python way, I think, yes. The details of his, ocelot pants and underwear, it kind of reminds me of the Holy Grail and ocelot spleen and wolf nipple chips. I don't know if these references actually mean anything to your listeners, but yes, I think the Paul Manafort trial could be a long Monty Python skit.
I gotta say, the one takeaway that I've got is, my God, what a patsy I am, working in this town, busting my butt for 3 hours every day on WMAL. I'm not making any kind of money. I got to get into this gang. There is kind of this impression that Paul Manafort, who was once the campaign manager of Donald Trump, was very much a part of the swamp, sir.
Oh, indubitably. He was part of the international swamp. I mean, whether it was Eastern Europe or whether it was here in D.C., absolutely. And the kinds of monies this man was making for exactly doing, I'm not sure what, but yes, an individual who sadly, look, the absurd point about all of this is this man worked for 4 months for candidate Trump in 2016, and now we have to watch this farrago of a trial with regards to a contract he had with the Ukraine, not Russia, back in 2010. So it is rather laughable.
What do you make of the star witness, Rick Gates, star witness for the prosecution, that is? Because a whole lot has been learned about this guy, and if you're the jury, you got to start wondering whether he's saying the truth or whether he's just saying what he needs to say to get out of trouble.
I think his credibility is clearly in question. My issue is the pool of jurors that you get to pick in. It's an Alexandria court, if I know well. That is a decidedly Democrat part of Virginia, and if Byron York was right, the fact that they took the jury took lots of notes, handwritten notes, when the prosecutor was talking, but took no notes when Paul Manafort's counsel was speaking. Hopefully this isn't a done deal already, and people will actually listen to what's going on in the courtroom before they make their minds up.
That said, though, if Paul Manafort is found guilty of tax fraud and banking fraud and the things that he's accused of, and listen, if he broke the law, I want justice to be done. Does it in any way reflect on the judgment of the president that he hired Paul Manafort in the first place, or does it call into question the campaign that was run?
Well, I think it's very clear why this man was hired. Let's ignore for a second whether he worked for the Ukraine 12 years ago. This is an individual who's been around the swamp, I think, working as a consultant to campaign since the 1980s or even before that. And this is an individual who knew intimately how the levers, the buttons had to be pressed to get a convention to go in a certain way of a specific candidate. So, he was there to get the president the requisite support for the convention. And once he did that, Kellyanne and Steve Bannon came on board. So, he did what had to be done, and it had nothing to do with Russia, the Ukraine, or, Ocelot underpants.
Well, let's move on to... Now, wait a minute. Is that the underpants that an ocelot would wear? Or underpants made from the...
You'd have to ask the judge, I'm sorry.
Yeah, or ask the ocelot. Let's move on to things that actually matter to the American voter and to the world, for that matter. North Korea, we had that summit there that was sort of a quickly put together thing that was really just about sort of getting these two leaders together, and then many of the details of denuclearizing the Korean Peninsula were to take place now. And we're starting to learn some things. It doesn't sound like North Korea is warming to Secretary of State Pompeo's suggestions that it's time for them to denuclearize. What is your take of this?
I think from the get-go, I mean, Singapore was amazing. It was historic, the fact that we got the remains of 55 of our servicemen back on the 65th anniversary of the armistice is huge.
Hugely
But at the end of the day, this is a Stalinist dictatorship, and the idea that you're just going to flick a switch and suddenly they're going to play nice is, of course, more than naive. I think it's clear that there are vested interests inside the regime various hardliners, the military, etc., who do not want to see any rapid rapprochement between Washington and North Korea and South Korea. So, they're gumming up the works. But there's been some good news. Beyond the return of the MIA servicemen, we've had cancellation of the annual anti-American parade. That sends a very positive message that there will be some behavior modification. But I tell you what, I don't want to be the interlocutor that has to deal with an angry Mike Pompeo. So Pyongyang, you're going to get your shoes squeezed, as they used to say in, NYPD Blue.
Yeah, between number one grad at West Point, Mike Pompeo, and then John Bolton's formidable mustache. I don't want to deal with any of that. Talk to me about this. I turn over to CNN sometimes. I don't know why I do it. And all they're talking about is Rand Paul and this letter he delivered to Vladimir Putin, and whether it was something the White House asked him to do or whether he asked the White House to let him do it. And they're saying that this shows that the president has a schizophrenic foreign policy with regard to Russia. Can you unpack this for us?
Yeah, totally. Well, first things first, let's note it's Rand Paul. Okay, so everything's a little bit different when you're dealing with Rand Paul. The story is, if you read Paul's tweet, it's very specifically worded that he didn't actually give the letter to Putin. He gave it to the administration. It seems clear that he didn't actually get an audience. He didn't get to meet Vladimir Putin. And this was a letter, according to the White House, and I think their story holds water at this moment, that Rand Paul requested by way of a letter of introduction to the Russian administration. Now, why Rand Paul needs a letter of introduction is strange, but I think he's overplayed his hand. He's perhaps slightly misrepresented it. But at the end of the day, it's such another non-story that is only being played on CNN and everywhere else because they're just pathological when it comes to Russia. So the idea that a senator took a letter by way of introduction to the Russian premier, okay, the sun is going to rise tomorrow morning as well, Don Lemon, so get ready.
I got a few more questions. Can you stick around for one more segment, Dr.
Yeah,
Gorka?
absolutely. I'd love to.
Oh, that's great to know. All right, Dr. Sebastian Gorka stays with us a little bit more. We need a little Gorka today. I got more questions for him, and of course, I haven't even gotten to the fainting or screaming goat issue yet, so we will tackle that as well. Keep it here on WMAL.
Washington's Mall, WMAL, where Washington comes to talk.
We continue with Dr. Sebastian Gorka, Fox News national security strategist, and also the New York Times bestselling author of Defeating Jihad. When asked who should play him in the film version of the Donald Trump White House, he replied, Russell Crowe.
Are you not entertained? Are you not entertained? Is this not why you are here?
Did you ever do that, Seb? Did you ever walk into the White House, the West Wing, and start screaming that at the top of your lungs?
I do have to say, "Are you not entertained?" is one of my favorite phrases.
I can see you ripping off your shirt after a Fox News appearance, screaming that to the Hannity crew. CNN. To the CNN ones, absolutely. Really, Russell Crowe. But then you kind of gave him a dig. You sort of slammed Russell Crowe's dad bod there. You said he has to.
I haven't seen it, but I saw the clip of him in that new superhero movie. What was it, The Mummy? And he has let himself go to seed a little bit. I mean, he might be just method acting.
Yeah, he just does that for the part, man.
Compare that to, I think, what's that thing you advertise, that wonderful weight loss system?
EMP.
You might have to try that one.
We got to get Russell Crowe on EMP 180. Well, you can do it on the internet, no matter where you live, even Australia. You said, hopefully Russell Crowe in his heyday, not today. He doesn't look like he did when he was in Gladiator. Well, that suggests that you look like he did in Gladiator, Seb.
I'm talking about the Hollywood version of the Trump White House. I mean, we can stretch things a little, can't we?
I think we've come up with a whole, like a 1-hour segment on this program. Who do you cast in the movie of the first 6 months of the Trump White House? But we'll do that another day. By the way, I'm a little annoyed that you gave that juicy quote to ITK News Service. Those are the kind of, listen, Seb Gorka saying Russell Crowe should play him in the movie is what you should reserve for the Larry O'Connor show. Come on.
Look, I can't help it. I'm going to Dinesh D'Souza's premiere of his amazing new film.
Don't drop names with
The Death
me.
of the Nation, and they're just shoving microphones in our face at the premiere. So I have no idea who I'm talking to. And they ask a funny question. So the sad thing is, this is the stuff that actually gets traction on social media. I love to put substantive stuff up there about North Korea and Russia and China, but this is the stuff people care about, I guess.
Yes, tell me about it. Listen, but let's try to think of something else that could go viral. Hope Hicks, you worked in the White House. You worked there when Hope Hicks was running the communication shop. She was seen on Air Force One the other day. Is that a good thing for this White House? Do you think that they need Hope Hicks back in the fold?
I think that now Bill Shine is there. I think everything is in its right place. Sarah Huckabee Sanders remains a princess warrior in the White House press briefing room. So Hope Hicks, look, I'll tell you one thing about the president that shouldn't surprise anybody who watches him closely and watches who comes in and out of the building or who he stays in touch with. If you are loyal to the president, he is very, very loyal to you. He's reached out to me several times since I left the White House, and if he values your opinion or the way you comport yourself, then that is something that lasts forever.
All right. Well, see, there you gave me something, that the president's been reaching out to you at various times. Have you actually had a meeting in the White House since you left, or just he reaches out to you in other ways?
I had dinner with the president. That's been reported, so that's out there. And the last time we spoke was when we were both in Singapore for the summit.
Gotcha. And let me ask you this about last night's primaries. You know, it's so funny. When Republicans win, they lose. Two questions for you. Number one, was that an unequivocal win for Republicans, even if it was close in Ohio? And secondly, is there any way this guy wins if Trump doesn't go and hold that rally last week?
No, with regards to the latter, absolutely not. So, he was so far behind, it was absolutely a Trump bump. Also, I want to make a point that's really important here, that people are trying to project that this isn't such a big deal because the turnout for Republicans wasn't that good. These are special elections. This is when the Democrats pull out all the stops, and the fact that every single one of those individuals that was endorsed by this socialist lunatic, Ocasio-Cortez, was completely trounced, is very, very good for the Trump candidates and the GOP writ large come November.
That is the big story, by the way. You're right. It's not about who won. It's about who lost, and it's all of the socialists that Bernie Sanders and Ocasio-Cortez. I thought she was the rising star of the Democratic Party. It's very sad. Dr. Sebastian.
I just hope they keep on pushing her out. Her, Nancy, Bernie. Just
Don't forget Maxine Waters.
Giving them interviews.
Don't forget Maxine Waters. Hey, by the way, sleeping goats or fainting goats? What are your what's your goat of choice?
I was really hoping you weren't going to ask me, but I'll go with fainting.
Fainting goats. Interesting. All right, good to know. Well, they're no trouble. You just pick them up and move them out of the way. Thank you, Dr. Sebastian Gorka. Always good to talk to you, my friend.
Thank you. God bless you and the listeners.